of the world.
As we mark the anniversary of the Lehman Brothers collapse today, what do you see as the key challenges for Australia as we move forward? The Treasurer refers to underemployment, the fact that there's been a move from full-time to part-time work. Helen Coonan, do you see that as one of the key issues that the government needs to try and get that back on track, give people the hours of work they want and need?
Well, I think that when you really look across, what's happened, what we really need to do is to look at what is going to be a proper exit strategy from the massive stimulus really that's around the world. Let's not just concentrate on Australia, but we can certainly talk about Australia, and we've said that with the emergency receding, there is no longer the need to keep up the level of stimulus that's currently being pumped into the economy.
And that's the message from the RBA as well, that they seem to be suggesting that the next move will be up in terms of rates.
Well, that's right, and I mean, we really do have to be careful that we aren't sort of pulling policy levers in different directions, that monetary policy is in effect, tightening, and that fiscal policy is still pumping away and pumping all this stimulus into the economy. We've got a situation where we've got the third stimulus package yet to be rolled out. That's the infrastructure package. We've got all the waste that we've seen in the second stimulus package. We think that with the emergency clearly receding, there really is a very good case for the government to look at how they can get better value for money. Now, all of this feeds into looking at what you're going to do to create greater productivity, to create more jobs. The figures that we've got are totally out of date. They're totally out of whack. Since the budget that forecast 8.25% unemployment, predictions are now with employment having been steady at 5.8, that it might peak at, bottom out at 6%. Now, that's a very good thing. We don't want to see unemployment, but I think we've got to be very careful to make sure that we're not really sending very confusing signals with this increased stimulus.
Well, the Reserve Bank is going to publish the minutes of its last policy-setting meeting today, Craig Emerson. If there is a message in that, and indeed if rates do start moving up, your government says you're going to moderate the stimulus, it's inbuilt, but isn't there a case for moderating it a little bit quicker?
Well, this is the profound difference between the Coalition and Labor on economic policy. We do not believe in the early withdrawal of stimulus, nor has the Reserve Bank argued for the early withdrawal of stimulus, nor Treasury, nor the International Monetary Fund, the OECD, the World Bank, the G20, or any reputable business organisation in this country. The point that you led in with your question about reduced working hours means reduced purchasing power. So the road to recovery will be a long one, because while it's a good social outcome in very difficult circumstances, that people, rather than losing their jobs in very large numbers, and enough, more than enough, one too many, one job lost is one too many, but where to the extent that businesses large and small have reduced the working hours, then that's reduced purchasing power, and they won't have the power, the purchasing power to get us back into, a racing recovery. It's going to be a slow recovery.
You concede it's quite a delicate balancing act between keeping the economy growing and overheating the economy.
Well, I don't think there's any sign of the overheating of the economy. Last week we had figures on retail sales, a contraction in retail sales. We had figures on employment, a contraction in employment. We've got reduced working hours.
We've got unemployment.
Well, that's confidence in the government, in the government's economic management, in part.
Let's be
that's because we've managed it through the stimulus. If there were no stimulus, 210,000 more people would be out of work. That would be a social disaster.
Let's accept, for the sake of this debate, that the stimulus is fine to now. The question really is...
Well, that has not been the coalition position. You voted against it.
I just said, let's accept, for the purposes of this discussion, you've still got another 40 billion to be pumped in due from the 1st of July next year. You've still got another 22 billion, some of that would be the same money, of course, 22 billion with the third tranche of the stimulus, and you've still got the wind down of the current stimulus that you've got in the system.
Helen, this is all in the budget.
Please let me just finish. The budget was predicated on a different set of figures. We won't know till MyEFO. I'm sure you don't even know what the figures are in MyEFO. Until MyEFO comes out in November, we won't really know just how well this economy is doing. We think on all the indicators it's doing extremely well. And I said, as the emergency has clearly receded, you can't continue to pump away on policy settings that you put in place when you said the sky was falling in.
Okay,
well, the sky was falling in, and you've just conceded that you don't know how the economy is travelling.
No, I
you
said
did. You said that won't happen until MyEFO.
I said the confirmation
what
will
you're
be
saying now,
MyEFO.
Helen,
all the indications
what you're saying now is
that
pull
the
out the
economy
supports.
is no longer in an emergency
and you're
situation.
saying pull out the supports.
And you're saying it's still in an emergency situation.
We're saying that the recovery will be a very gradual, slow recovery.
But
and that is the fundamental difference.
Your settings are emergency settings, and that's where the fallacy is
all right.
there.
Start telling us where you're going to cut.
The other point
Don't run around saying you're going to cut
that's really
and then say you're not
that you guys
going to
keep
tell us
saying,
where.
and you're dead wrong, is around the world, and the G20 have said this, every country must exit according to its own circumstances. They've also talked about the stimulus, sure, but every country has to look at their own circumstances.
Well, we've got our own budget. No one else is setting our budget.
For the purpose of exiting, and your budget has been set on emergency settings.
Tell us where you want to cut.
We're going to pause, take a break. We'll be back in a moment.